Good day, brothers and sisters. Thank you so very much for joining us again. We're back with another panel discussion panel reading and discussion of the Book of Enoch. We are continuing the discussion. I see Sister Serena's in the chat, and Sister Serena, is Brother Robert around? Will he be joining us? Shout out to Brother Robert. I haven't seen him, but hoping he joins us. Brother David, Brother Rick, and I are here. Greetings, fellas. Thank you so very much for joining me today.
Hello.
Appreciate y'all so very much. So we're going to be picking up on chapter 6 and just rolling through as we do with the readings, the discussion, and then wherever we get to, within that hour is where we will end up. So there's a subheading that was up, or that is up now, before chapter 6, which says the fall of the angels, the demoralization of mankind, the intercession of the angels on behalf of mankind, the dooms pronounced by God on the angels, and Messianic kingdom. So we'll be hitting next slide. And I'll read first. Brother David, if you'd like to take the next slide, and Brother Rick with the next. We'll go with that order as displayed on the side of the screen. Does that work for you guys?
Sure.
Sounds good.
Appreciate y'all. Chapter 6. And it came to pass, when the children of men had multiplied, that in those days were born unto them beautiful and comely daughters. And the angels, the children of the heaven, saw and lusted after them, and said to one another, Come, let us choose us wives from among the children of men, and begat us children.
And Semyaza, who was their leader, said to them, I fear you will not indeed agree to do this deed, and that I alone shall have to pay the penalty of a great sin. And they all answered him and said, Let us all swear by an oath, and all bind ourselves by mutual imprecations, not to abandon this plan, but to do this thing. Then swore they all together, and bound themselves by mutual imprecations upon it.
And they were in all 200 who descended in those days of Jared on the summit of Mount Hermon. And they called it Mount Hermon because they had sworn and bound themselves by mutual word upon it.
Imprecations.
Yeah, imprecations. Sorry.
Okay.
And these are the names of the leaders: Semyaza, ends in a Z. And their leader Arakiba, Ramiel, Kokabiel, Tamiel, you guys gave me the hard one.
Sorry,
Daniel.
Oh, jeez, I realized you got the name slide.
Ezekiel.
Brachiel.
No. All right, somebody take over. I can't.
I got you. Brachiel, Asael, Armoros, Batarel, Ananel, Zachiel, Samsopiel, Satarel, Turel, Jomjael, Sariel.
Wow. Nice. These are the chiefs of tens.
Amen. So, yeah, chapter 6 is awesome. It starts to set the stage for some cool stuff. And it came to pass, when the children of men had multiplied, that in those days were born unto them beautiful and comely daughters. What are your thoughts on that, brothers? What lineage do you think they're referring to?
The first thing I would comment is Genesis 6 is equal to Enoch 6 here.
Ooh, that's a good observation.
Because if you go to Genesis 6, then you're going to find the same story. And it's just interesting that it happens at the exact same spot. Just something that I noted there.
Yeah.
And the lines are parallel as well. You say, what line do you believe they're descended of?
Yeah. the because obviously they're talking about like the women ultimately that the fallen angels were going after. So my first question is like, what lineage do you think they're referring to, or not even lineage, but like, yeah, well, yeah, we could say what lineage are we at, because we do know at this point in time, Cain killed Abel, and Cain is off into the world at this point, or into the earth at this point.
It's possible they were daughters of Cain. I don't personally subscribe to that interpretation as being necessary,
Okay.
because as I understand it, it was women in general that they had lust for, and that it didn't matter to them of what specific line. Though I would also add it would almost make more sense to target the children of Seth if you're taking the view that the children of Seth were more righteous, because they would be higher prizes in terms of taking them away from God.
Nice. That's good counterpoint. I appreciate that.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, which I think is the ultimate goal. I don't think the lust of their hearts was the objective to fulfill the lust. I think it was to commit to, because they later on in the verse they really have to commit to it. It's not just, oh, I think I'll go do this thing and it'll be cool. They really have to, they know the consequence and they really have to commit themselves to it. So I think the bigger picture is that they want to defile God's creation versus just fulfill themselves.
Definitely.
Okay. Got some interesting theories.
What do you think of the words wives, though? That's a question I wanted to ask. Do you believe they were wives like, one of us would take a wife? Or do you think that they're mocking the term wife? I know that some people say that the angels forcibly took them. And then there's the other view. The current view that I think I have is more of the Dracula view, where there's this allure about them that's a supernatural allure.
But hold on. We haven't got to wives yet, have we? Oh, yes. No, sorry. I'm second. Okay, that's fair. My bad.
So it's just kind of an interesting thought. Is did they willingly choose the fallen angels, or were they basically forced into that? Or alternatively, was it almost an enchantment placed upon them?
See, that's where I wonder about the idea of like, were they interested in procreating, one, or when you say, as you say, wives, they're actually interested in making the commitment to that individual and have like a family.
That's a good point. I never thought of that. I always assumed absent father.
Well, yeah, no, but I mean, that's we don't know, because the things that we do know that are constants are they left their post in heaven, which shows irresponsibility. They've now decided to go do this thing. Well, we'll obviously get into the rest of the unpacking of it, but like I think that I read this verse and I think to myself, what's the word that could have been swapped into there to be less committal? Like, let us go to earth and spread our seed. Let us go to earth and procreate. Let us go to earth and have us children of our own. But like, why is it that the word wives was used in the second verse? And obviously we're subject to like if it's been mistakenly translated incorrectly. But if the word in fact is wives, then why was there a demonstration of like a commitment in that word? Sense made?
Yeah, that's very interesting. The only thing that comes to mind for me is a sense of like commitment and ownership. If it was just daughters of men, that's a hey, brother Robert.
I think we got brother Robert
floating in.
He's splashing in. Let's see here, because his screen was white. Hey, look at that beautiful face. What up, brother? Look at that, man. Good to see you, brother. Thanks for joining us. We're literally just on verse 2.
Okay, thank you. And
no worries, brother.
My family was doing their level best to get me on the internet, and I'm like, but my computer is running so slow. I do apologize.
It's no stress, brother. Just glad you made it.
Well, if you would get yourself out of the Grand Canyon behind you there, I don't know where that's at, but you might have better connection.
Hey, look, even the very rocks will cry out, okay?
It's beautiful. I love your backgrounds. Mine's
Very
boring.
nice.
No, it's not, because you're in it. So I'm
Well,
just
not
saying.
today. I'm having some camera troubles today.
So where we were literally just throwing the ball around, Brother Robert, and I'll read the verse, and we'd love to get your input on this. So verse 2, and the angels, the children of the heaven, saw and lusted after them, and said to one another, come, let us choose us wives from among the children of men, and begat us children. So the question that I was kind of stuck on, the question I was stuck on is, why was the word wives used? Was there a commitment of a relationship, or was it strictly like them just wanting to come and procreate, have kids?
This could be a little bit crude, so I don't mean it misogynistically. I promise that I'm not going to be speaking out of abuse towards females. Uh, but it is entirely likely that it's it's a Western word. I mean, this might be R.H. Charles. This might be Mr. Lawrence. I don't know which translation this is. But if a female is the companion of a man, that's his woman. And then we've westernized it and called it wife. But it's come, let us choose women from amongst the children of men, and let us have children. And then we make it sound a little softer or a little nicer and say, let us choose wives. And it's like, yeah, well, you're taking them as a possession in order to. I think I heard this while I was backstage. David saying, hey, let's corrupt the lineage of Seth. And it could be just corrupt all of humanity,
Right.
but yeah, if either any of you are familiar with it, it's like in Hebrew, there's the word isha. Isha is woman of, property or possession, or the companion of. And you really only have two types of females. You have a maid, and you have a wife, woman. You've taken her maidenhead. You've made her your woman. So come, let us choose females and make them our women. Um, so as far to answer Killian's regard of, what did I say, of was it relationship? I mean, it's physical, like, hey, we'll be committed to each other while it suits me. We'll be committed to each other as long as, like, we don't have that background.
Right.
But the angels wanted possessions. They wanted females. They wanted something that's not ordained from our heavenly Father. So I mean, tune into what is sin, and pride, eh, many weeks back, and this choice to have the mutual imprecations, and this choice to be lusting. Something or other is that they're prideful. Something or other is saying, let's make men in our image to compete with, the Genesis 1 account. Elohim, Yahweh says, let's make man in Yahweh's image. And the angels are like, yeah, we can do it too, and they did it by lusting. So I rambled a little bit there, but I think that one of the key things has to do is that a female who's under her father is seen as a maid, and the female who's with a husband is a wife or a woman. Let us take women. I mean, 200 fell, but the earth was populated with them. They took lots of women.
So let me just clarify a few things for myself.
Okay.
I think I was just thinking as Brother Robert was speaking, and I think that perhaps it's a cultural thing that may have been translated into a cultural thing. Because like he said, daughter is undefiled, daughter is young, daughter is virgin, wife once you're had as a woman in a marital relationship, you're a wife. And if you betray that commitment, death, I suppose. I mean, exile, shame. You really don't get a choice. So if these watchers were taking them as wives, that would be seen in their culture that they were already defiled and they were already owner property of, which is kind of brutal, I guess. But once a man has chosen and claimed and partaken of a female, then he's owner in their culture. So perhaps it just literally means to take as ownership, to take as wives, to take as ownership. But let me be the opposition. Let me be that guy and go further and say, because I think Brother David or Brother Robert, I'm sorry, touched on something that I didn't know about, and perhaps the other guys didn't know about, that this is a simple phrase, a simple chapter, a simple verse, and we have added to it with our understanding of the verse. How much of that changes the understanding, which could be said about the whole Bible, but especially in this case. I don't think it changes too much in this specific verse, but how much of Enoch has been touched like that? How much have we added to make it better understood that wasn't there in the beginning?
Yes.
More westernized, perhaps.
Yeah.
Yes. And so I will always attempt to, as Rick is going, I will attempt for the how do you make common ground? Well, none of us are Middle Eastern, and none of us are, really like, we're all Westerners. So what did Enoch write? What did Enoch mean? What did the translators choose for English? Um, I mean, yeah, there's a possessiveness in the way our Heavenly Father desires it, and I think that the angels were not to be possessive over human males or females, and yet here they are. Let's choose them. And I was like, but you're not supposed to.
Yeah, they're called the Watchers, not the owners.
And that's what they say. They were supposed to oversee or be literally the watchers, overseers of mankind, and instead they chose to leave their posts, their watch, and go meddle with mankind.
Speaking on that real quick,
Yeah.
just a quick observation that I've always been curious of. Do you think the word watcher means watcher as in to protect, or is this a punishment? Are they to watch and see God's creation come to fruition and be punished by it?
I think it is a class, like they're cherub and seraph and cherubim, seraphim. I think watchers is one of the segments of sorts of angels, that there's 200 who sin, but there's many other of their brothers in that same class. So we use the term guardian angel. I think this is an equivalent. Maybe we've westernized that and romanticized guardian angel, but I think it's on that scale. Um, and however many watchers there are, well, what are they assisting with? They're watching, observing, and some of them sinned. Like they lusted on, like they're supposed to be on guard duty, and they lusted after their watch. They lusted after the people who were under their care.
Keep that in mind as we go through the book, because they're going to receive judgment and punishment, and that's it right there. Because I had the same conclusion that they were protectors. They weren't just watchers where they watched from afar and were to be tormented by the sight. They were in charge of our protection, in charge of perhaps our growth, because one of their mortal sins is to give us too much knowledge that we weren't supposed to have. So perhaps they were even supposed to mentor us and tutor us. and they betray all of that and just go on their own path and completely oppose the design nature that God had designed them for and assigned them to, which is numero uno, number one. You don't do that. God will absolutely bring down the hammer on you if you do that.
Indeed. A last thought on this slide before we move along is, well, not that that's the last say, but I know that Killian also wants us to get to the next slide so that we can keep going. One of the things I was going to comment is the way that you phrased that there, that they're watching over something, they're watching over humanity. If we take the male humans out of it for that moment and just look at it as they were supposed to watch over the female humans, not supposed to mate with them, that it reminds me of ancient medieval kings, and especially in the Middle East, how it was eunuchs who would look after the queen, but they didn't want any hot-blooded men near the queen. And it's just interesting that that's a thing that I kind of see here as like the thing that corrupted them to an extent. That's funny if you look at it that way. The last thought I was going to add, though, was what are they being protected from, assuming that they are guardians? Just out of curiosity. I don't personally have an answer to that as to what they'd be guarding against, unless it was Satan himself. If we assume that he had already fallen, which we have to assume to keep the timeline in correct stance, then were they supposed to guard against him?
There are, I mean, not rumors, but apparently angels do have certain assignments, whether one is to make sure that the celestial bodies travel in the correct succession and everything goes accordingly and the wind blows and so on and so forth. So I don't know exactly what they had on an individual responsibility level. They could in fact just have been like the bodyguards, the overseers, watching over, ensuring that all was going well.
Humanity was in its infancy, so I think God probably set up a protection plan for it, not because he thought it would fail, but just in general, just for our benefit. Take, for instance, Pompeii. We all like this mountain. We know it's on fire constantly, but we like it. And then it explodes and kills everybody. So I think watchers probably would be like, hey, let's not build here. Let's go to this nice forest over here.
Yeah, that's possible. That's very possible. Pompeii had it coming, though.
Oh, yeah.
All right, I will get to the next slide.
One extra to be in agreement with Rick. This is how come I don't think that Adam and Eve genetically passed the information that they gleaned down to their children. I think the Watchers were educators. I think I think that Scripture speaks about them having a mission. Part of it was Watcher, part of it was educator, and in trade, they were like, hey, we plan on teaching the evil things, and using females as commodity, like education for your women, and but yeah, back to the thing about Adam and Eve eating of the tree of the knowledge of good and evil, that I don't think it genetically, the knowledge that they possess, I don't think it got transferred down the line. Whatever they ate of, I think the angels were still sent for educational purposes, with a good mission, and yet some corrupted off of that by the lust, the pursuit of lust.
And that's one of the things, the lust goggles. You talk about the beer goggles, go out for drinking and so on and so forth. Before you know it, you're looking at something you didn't quite think you thought you saw. But things look different with the lust goggles on. All of a sudden, responsibility gets thrown out the window when you got the lust goggles on. Verse 3, and Semyaza, who is their leader, said unto them, I fear you will not indeed agree to do this deed, and I alone shall have to pay the penalty of a great sin. So they fully knew, or he fully knew anyways, and let them know that this was an issue. This was a sin. When you look at this, what do you guys think they're throwing around the actual sin being?
Well, one of the first things that comes to mind, which may be getting away from the question there, is that they're swearing an oath, which is interesting if you know what Yahushua says to us about swearing oaths. You know, do not swear an oath either by heaven nor by earth, but let your yes be yes and your no be no. It's just kind of interesting that that's the case. I do think that the great sin is definitely to interbreed with mankind, which was not their right. But it's a great sin to me seems so little as a way of phrasing it, because I'm like, sins, plural. You add a lot to it. You don't just do one thing. Like the things that you teach end up multiplying sin by a ridiculous amount. But the fact that they bind themselves by an oath and mutual imprecations, I'm sure all four of us are aware of a group who would use phrases like that and who make people swear oaths when they join them. I'm not going to go into further detail than that here, but just saying it's interesting to me that the fallen angels do that we are told by God not to, and then that we see that modern esoteric groups do that.
Very true. And I think I know where your head's at, but I'll leave it at that. So what I gather from this is that, dude, the names. Simi, I'm going to call him Simi. Simi,
Yeah.
our friend Simi is, Robert missed it. I was a mess earlier. They gave me the hardest verse. But Semyaza is a leader, and yet he cannot command them to do this for fact of fear, I suppose. I don't know. But I think this verse just is in place to imply that they knew the seriousness of it and committed themselves to the consequences and committed themselves to the cause, despite Semyaza being able to command them. It seems, being their leader, they would not have went through with it anyway, it seems. So it's an outline to me as of how serious this is to them, binding themselves to not abandon the task and run in fear, I suppose, of God. But it means a lot to point that out to me when I read it, because we always assume evil does evil, but evil has a choice. All these angels chose this and had a choice from the beginning. So
very true.
Agreed. I mean, further the confirmation comes in verse 4, and they all answered him and said, "Let us all swear an oath and all bind ourselves by mutual imprecations not to abandon this plan, but to do this thing." So they're all down to do it. Don't do it. Verse 5, then swear they all together and bound themselves by mutual imprecations upon it. So the contract was laid out, agreed to, and everybody went in. Then we got, this was Brother Rick's slide that he read earlier. We want me to read it again, Brother Rick. Hey, Brother David, you want to read this one?
Sure, I'll do it.
Nice.
You got
just verse 6?
Yeah, verse 6 for now. Thanks, brother.
Okay. And they were in all 200 who descended in the days of Jared on the summit of Mount Hermon. And they called it Mount Hermon because they had sworn and bound themselves by mutual imprecations upon it. What does Hermon mean, actually?
What's with imprecations? Like, wow. Go ahead.
Yeah, which I did put I double checked this lookup that it does just mean curses, and in an archaic sense, in like a superstitious way, they would do a imprecation with an oath, like, and this curse will befall you if you do it. So I will say, if you know what's going to befall you from God, what are you threatening each other with? Like, what do you think you can do that God can't to each other? Anyways,
Oh, okay. So I was confused about that as well. So they threatened each other, saying if you don't do this, there'll be consequences from us, not just God, but from us.
right,
Yes.
and I don't know that
Okay,
they're saying
okay.
that to like those who don't participate, but I think they're saying once we agree to do it, if you back out,
Yeah.
which kind of sounds like the prisoner's dilemma a little bit to me there. You know, like the if you turn on each other, then we'll commute the sentence, but they're trying to get ahead of that.
Yeah,
know
very very good point. What could they what could you threaten with that isn't already hanging over their head?
I know that in fiction, and it's not my praise of it. It's actually the fact that with magic and with sorceries, um, the term is not unfamiliar to us. Um, if at any point in your life you've read Harry Potter or watched Harry Potter movies, there's a saying, and it goes around as a meme. I solemnly swear I'm up to no good. But then after that, uh, there are things called the unbreakable vow or the unbreakable curse, and like think of that. That's popularized into book form of the 20th century and then the 21st century, and we think, oh well, it's something phony or whatever. It's like, no, that's by mutual implications. That's a unbreakable magic spell. Like, you go forward with this and you're fully, Rick said it there, the evil has a choice, and they know that there's um, they they're going in with their eyes open.
Mm.
Fully aware. No surprises.
Yeah.
Like, you realize what we're gonna do, right? Everybody's doing this. Ain't no backing out. Everybody jumps down the rabbit hole.
Go.
All right. So 200 of them that all descended, and they all obviously had more than one relationship. So who knows how many giants were abound on the earth at that time. I don't really think we need to go through the names because, well, the one commitment, I mean, the committal is obviously, and these are the names of their leaders. Semyaza, their leader, Arakiba, so on and so forth. But what we learn later on is that each of these angels taught the women of Earth a different sect, a different thing, not SECT, get your mind out of the gutter. From a standpoint of like one taught astrology, one taught how the weather worked, things of that nature. Anyways, I digress. Verse 8,
Wait,
these are,
yeah.
sorry, go ahead.
No, I thought you were going to switch the slide. I wanted to comment on verse 8.
I was about to, but please go ahead, brother.
So this always confused me because I read it with a Unga Bunga mind, and I tried to read into it more than it is. These are the chiefs of tens, so it's numerical. It lists 19 leaders, and then our buddy, what was his name? Simi.
Semi.
Yeah.
Yep.
It lists 20 leaders and then says they're the chiefs of tens. So if each of them have a company of 10 tens, it equals out to 200. So it's explaining the verse before it. I tried my best to understand this in such a deep way, and it's just numerical.
Brother, and I'll be straight up with you. I've never even reflected on that. Never even thought about it. Seriously, I thank you so, like, literally, my emoji. I salute you, brother. Well done.
I will comment on that as well, Brother Rick. I totally identify with that statement. I did that when I first read it and was like, wait, there's 18 names right there. What? There's 19. Okay, I missed one. They're blurring together a little bit. And then I went back and I was like, wait, Semyazaz isn't the leader. It was Semyaza. Now they're changing names. And then I was like, oh, there's only 19. But yeah, no, I did that too. I feel that.
Yeah.
Appreciate y'all. Oh, snap. That's it for chapter 6. Chapter 7. We're at 35 minutes in, so I'll read first. Brother Robert, would you like to read first? And then I'll go after you.
Sure, I can read the screen or I can read one of the verses.
Screen would be
Okay.
what's on screen. So the first two verses, we'll just do a cold read of the first or of chapter 7, and then we'll double back.
So this would be following verse 7. And so it's all the other, verse 1, and all the others together with them took unto themselves wives. Each chose for himself one, and they began to go in unto them, and to defile themselves with them, and they taught them charms and enchantments. So that's notable, it's something different. And the cutting of roots, and made them acquainted with plants. And they became pregnant, and they bare great giants, whose height was 3,000 ells. Some people think that might be inches, but we don't know.
Oh no,
I can read the next screen if you like.
no, I'll go next.
Okay.
And then if there's more, Brother David, Brother Rick, who consumed all the acquisitions of men, and when men could no longer sustain them, the giants turned against them and devoured mankind. And they began to sin against birds and beasts and reptiles and fish, and to devour one another's flesh and drink the blood. Then the earth laid accusation against the lawless ones. Okay, that's it for that chapter. Brother David, you be reading next. Don't forget.
Yeah.
All right.
So, verse 1, unpack. And all the others, and all the others together with them took unto themselves wives. Each chose for himself one. But we believe that there was more. What do you think? Thoughts?
That's a good point.
The 200
that's a
each
good
chose
point.
one.
Mhm.
Yeah, that's a good point. I've never really read that and comprehended it as just one, because we were just saying there are many and probably chose many wives, but that doesn't say that, does it?
Could you imagine if there was competition that all of a sudden ensued among them? Like one angel pulled one, the next angel pulled two, and the next guy was like, "Yo, I'm gonna pull 4 and top all of you," because that proves to be an egoic conflict right there.
Yeah.
And if you have an ego death or an ego match among angels, that could turn into war.
That's when you start hiding in the mountains and just like, I'm gonna hang out here, and yeah.
Find a burning bush and just keep warm beside it.
Exactly. Talk with it if you get bored and need some conversation. Remember to keep your sandals off, though. He doesn't
Seek
like
counsel
sandals
with
anymore.
it. Agreed.
I've always had the comical thought in the back of my mind as you are the average guy. You're not too great of a shepherd. You're not too great of a gardener or a harvester. You're probably a 3 or 4 in looks, and then giants come and decide they want to take wives, and you're just like, oh man, I really didn't have a chance before. Now I got all these Channing Tatums running around, just taking up all the girls.
You're done.
Not that's just to put comedy in it because that's where my mind goes. It's really not a comedic thing at all.
So,
but I will say, in a more serious sense, that it lists charms, enchantments, cutting of roots, and made them acquainted with plants. This, if in my opinion, kind of hints to a later verse where Enoch goes to heaven, and you see the layers of heaven, and the angels there are performing these tasks. They are in charge of many different gardens. They're in charge of many different responsibilities that require them to know this list of attributes.
So, have you guys ever thought about, and I'm going to be completely honest and put it out there so I'm not beating around the bush, but medicine that comes from the ground, and I'm going to refer to things like cannabis. I'm going to refer to things like mushrooms or magic shrooms, if you will, where you talk about cutting of roots and acquainted with plants, thinking like, are these the secrets of heaven that we were actually never meant to know about?
Considering that this is a derogatory term, a derogatory fashion for this verse, I would beg to differ. That God does not want us to know these things in that fashion. Like you just said, the hallucinogenic fashion, the medicinal purposes, I don't think there's a bad thing to be said there, but it goes way beyond that. They can be abused, and I think the abuse of them and the the fantasy of it, if anyone is a D&D nerd, they understand that charms and enchantments and roots and plants are very much part of that culture. And I don't think that any of the sources of fantasy that we have are completely made up. I think they all stem from some form of history and reality. So they were teaching them a demonic way to use and abuse the things that God had put in place for them to benefit.
By the way, am I back? Like, can
You're
you guys?
back.
Yep.
Yeah.
Okay. I lost sound, audio, and video for a second there because there's a lot of lightning and thunder happening in the background here. But I did want to comment on that as someone who is not a D&D nerd, but a RPG nerd in general.
Yeah, let's go.
Yeah, definitely. I do get those references there as like, rather than the more nefarious thing, my mind has like a split image where there's nefarious on one side and then the numerical stats that they would have for your character on the other side. But on that topic, I did just want to add a thought about an earlier verse. We were talking about imprecations and curses and how Brother Robert was referencing Harry Potter there. I did just think it's interesting that there are 3 curses that were the unforgivable curses in Harry Potter: the Imperio curse, which compels another against their free will; the Crucio curse, which tortures another; and Avada Kedavra, which murders. Just an interesting thing that it's torture, murder, and abusing another's free will, which are all, in my opinion, rather satanic things. So interesting that even in that morality of Harry Potter, they still saw that. As for cutting of roots and acquaintance with plants, there are 2 things that come to mind. The magic mushrooms definitely did come to mind because I've actually talked with people who have done that before and seen horrifying visions, where it's a thing where I think to myself, why would that be the case? Why does our brain react that way to it? Or is it our brain? Is it our soul that's reacting to it? It's an interesting question. But the other thing I always think of is, of course, Harry Potter, once again, because there's the botany class where they learn the cuttings of plants and roots, how to create spells with them. There's literally a plant that's alive called a mandrake in that, and it like screams at them, and they actually have to like learn how to kill it, basically.
I am very much on the same page with that, and that's exactly what I was talking about. It seems childish and whimsical in the setting of the Harry Potter movies, but this is the exact thing I'm talking about, where the Watchers would have been passing on knowledge to do demonic things, to give life to things that should not have life. If God wanted it to have life, it would be life. It wouldn't be a mandrake. By his design, you would have made it that, and therefore defilement. But to touch back on Killian's point, I don't think any of these things have any kind of like bearing in God's eyes, because he put them all here for our benefit. It's the use of them. Same as alcohol. The Bible talks about alcohol a lot of times, and it never talks about it in a derogatory fashion when they're using it right. It only talks about it when they're using it wrong. It never just straight condemns it. So these are much the same. I don't feel that there's any condemnation for the use of any of these things in a beneficial way, but there definitely is if you pervert them. Much like anything, if you take anything that God has designed for a purpose to benefit and pervert it, you've done wrong. You've sinned.
Awareness is key.
Yes. Discernment.
Fair enough. Well, yeah, discernment. Very well said. So, sorry, go ahead.
There's a chapter, Jeremiah chapter 7, at the end of our Enoch chapter 6. It made me think of Jeremiah chapter 7. The Levites of the days of Jeremiah working the temple in Jerusalem, in Judea, had fully switched to the wrong side, the evil side. They were then leading all of the people of Judea into worship of Baal, Ashtaroth, Ishtar, Babylonian and Egyptian deities, etc., etc. And there's a particular verse, chapter 16 of Jeremiah 7. It's do not pray for these people whatsoever. And it starts at verse 1. It goes all the way to like, it's nearly verse 40 or so. It's a long chapter. And it's filled with sections that say, you're doing this knowingly. You're doing this to pervert Yahweh's temple. You're doing this where this isn't a mistake. You're doing what's evil and wicked. And Yahweh says, do you not recognize that I'm going to seek vengeance against you? Well, we now are at chapter 7, verse 1, and like, I don't know the reason for having mushrooms, and I don't know the reason for having the coca plant, for instance. But I know that you get cocaine by mixing gasoline and paint thinner and acetone and other sorts of things into
Beep,
pulverized.
beep, beep. We're not teaching you how to make cocaine. Beep.
Right. Public service announcement. We're not training anyone on this, but this would be the defiling of the plant. The defiling of the plant can go from whatever our Heavenly Father said in Genesis 1. He looked at the earth and it was very good. Well, that includes the shrooms. That includes the hemp plant. That includes the other things that we don't know, but they get perverted into poisons and toxins and ecstasy and on and on. The poppy gets misused, and people will get opioid addicted. Following chapter 7, verse 1, there's so many present tense perversions of this that began all the way in the days of Enoch seventh from Adam, and so forth it goes.
So verse 2, and they became pregnant, and they bare great giants whose height was 3,000 ells. So cutting to the specific measurement, you can convert 3,000 ells. It converts to 2.13 miles.
Whoa.
That's
So
huge.
That's not what I've read. That's ridiculous.
Well,
what I've read is I don't know the length of an L, but I've read that the giants in Enoch's book are 250 to 300 feet in height.
But my thing is, and when I get to things like this, like, what is that based on, right?
Yeah.
And from a standpoint of like, this is written again, if it's been mistranslated or whatever, but it says 3,000 L's, and when I punch in convert 3,000 L's to kilometers, it comes out at 3.4 kilometers, 2.15 miles. That's crazy. But when you think about something that has such a large stature, it all of a sudden gives this massive idea of sheer like madness. Like if you had 200 of these beings walking around and they're 3.5 kilometers, they get into some kind of scrap, like they would just be eating stuff like crazy.
So let me ask, does it imply that the Nephilim take wives of their own and further on the race? Because that seems physically an impossibility.
Nah, they I don't, the Nephilim don't procreate.
Okay.
I think once like they kind of mature and all hell breaks loose, they start well, the flood comes before they can cause any further havoc.
So I don't think they were born sterile. I think they were born. I will try to look into this, but I think I don't know that they were all born male or female. I think that that they tended to take women of the earth. So whether the Nephilim were strictly male, but I don't think they were born sterile.
Mm.
It's just that clearly, if there are more Nephilim men, just on proportion alone, there will not be enough human female that are compatible physiologically. It won't happen. It won't happen, and without turning this, into R rating, male on male, even Nephilim male on male, is going to be an eventuality, because there's no females that are physiologically compatible, and so it's a fighting. It's like a lot of what's going on in the letters of Peter, and a lot of what's going on in the letters of Jude are right here, precisely from the last couple of chapter 5, chapter 6, chapter 7. It's right in here, because angels weren't supposed to cause their procreation, and the byproduct has horrible repercussions. So, but yeah, like I've done the numbers, and like after the fighting that the first generation, first tier Nephilim are, there's still several hundred years until the flood. So what's going on? I mean, we keep reading to find out. Tune in next time. But I go back to the very first. I don't think they were sterile, because if you made a horse with a donkey, a mule is not able to be reproduced, and I don't think that's the case with Nephilim.
Brother David, are you good?
Yeah, I mean, I'm pretty good. I definitely agree with Brother Robert about the Nephilim continuing to propagate. I've mentioned to you guys that I'm actually working on a work of historical fiction on this topic, and so I've actually written complicated genealogies of the different ways it could have gone with the Nephilim. It's all theory in that way, but the part that I posted in the chat is that in First Enoch and Jubilees, and in some of the other Qumran scroll writings, the Dead Sea Scrolls, for reference, Qumran, not Quran, just a difference there. The Elioid are mentioned as the children of the Nephilim, but not as the children of the Watchers. So that's just an interesting point to note there, is that it seems that they could have children, but one of my very weird doctrines, that is kind of why my faith sometimes sounds like mythology to people, is that one of my beliefs is the fallen angels and the Nephilim had shape-shifting ability of some kind. I don't fully understand how it works, but that's one of my beliefs there, is that it was somehow possible. And perhaps one of the reasons I think that is because the idea of an angel, with how they're both mentioned as massive and also as human-sized at different points in Scripture, I don't know how they could mate with a human woman. So it seems that they have to be able to take on the form of a human man, or at least something resembling it. Likewise, for a giant to be able to have a child, it would seem that they would have to either, I guess they could make the other person large too, if they knew a way to do that. But alternatively, they could shapeshift to something more humanoid.
So that brings something that's been cooking around in my mind, and we only have like 6 minutes, so I don't think we have time for it now. But you just said what I've been thinking. We skipped a big part of this story. How did the I lost the word.
Watchers?
Watchers. Yes, thank you. How did the Watchers procreate? Are they able to do so? Did they possess men? Are they shapeshifters? There's a big thing there that we missed, I think. At least in my mind. I've always been super curious about that, and I've heard a lot of people try to debunk this story based on that.
Like ultimately, do angels have follicles?
Well, the ability to do so. Yeah.
Right. So David, I feel, was the closest to this. That the eh, John chapter 3 in the Gospels is where Yeshua talks to Nicodemus, saying that you can't enter the kingdom of heaven unless you've been born of water and spirit. Uh, Yeshua's return out of the grave is with a body that is of that type. He walks through a door or a wall, and is he is of a different appearance in the garden with the Mary who appears to him, and he's of a different appearance to the disciples at the road to Emmaus, and so forth. Um, I can keep digging into this, and I don't mean for it to be gross, but I'm comprehending that angels are male and created with anatomy, and if in some of the disguise it means that they have seed, and if in some of the disguise that there's a shapeshift, perhaps, um, but certainly if that they're not androgynous is like an important thing.
What gives
That
you
they're not,
that implication that they are not endogenous?
yeah, that they're not, that they're neither androgynous nor sterile. Um, I was like, well, again, back to the mixing of a horse with a donkey, that a mule is a sterile uh, creature, um, and can't procreate. I
But
don't.
let me
I don't.
interrupt and ask, what gives you that impression? What makes you think that they are with the equipment and with the seed?
So that's some of the digging I'll be going into until we hit to the next panel. Um, but there were a couple of comparable, concurrent, like coincidental, not coincidental, synchronized. Aha, it's a Rob Skiba thing that Jasher Jubilees and possibly one or two extra texts um, do give extra information that Enoch and Genesis put forth, and I cannot place my finger on it. As like, okay, well, are they up in heaven with the ability to procreate or not? And does part of what Peter or part of what Jude says is they left their estate? Is that part of the shapeshifting may be that they also received procreate, like not received, but actually like put on the disguise of having procreation seed, you know, but that they are male, that they're equipped, but it goes into things that are like, okay, well, how did it happen? And it's like, it happened because they're born male, or excuse me, created male. And I think something changed from the heavenly to the earthly.
A thought that occurred on that topic is in Peter, the verse that I was referencing last time we met, that was talking about they lost their former estate, or they abandoned their former estate, which may have something to do with this, that might be an ontological change. It might be they physically changed when they broke through the firmament, or maybe they didn't break through the firmament, maybe they were already down here. But regardless, it's an interesting thought in that way. I do want to comment something on that, though. I've been kind of scrolling through articles, just seeing if anybody had thoughts on this, because, why not, while we've been talking. And something that would kind of encourage me to stick to what I'm currently believing on it, that they did, actually change their bodies, or that they were already able to, is because the arguments against it all seem to be based in opinion. For instance, angels don't have genitalia because there's already the same amount of angels that you would need. There's no need to make new ones. Or God never says it directly in scripture that we know of. Or it is a tradition among Jews that this is not the case. or something of the kind. So it's interesting that it's all opinion is what I'm seeing, but I can't find a verse against the idea. So just an interesting thing to add to the dialogue.
Thank you for that with the Peter reference. Do you have that chapter and verse?
Yeah, give me 1 second. I'll
Thank
find
you
it.
so much. My words, and I know we were so closing up on the 1 hour.
Yeah, Killian, how do you feel about the 1 hour? Should we press on or leave it for another day?
Well, yeah, no, we just have, 2 verses left
Oh.
within chapter 7, and then we'll be.
It's Jude. It's not Peter. It's Jude. Sorry, I didn't mean to interrupt. But
No, it's okay. Jude, yeah, Jude was the one that referenced Book of Enoch. Apologies, I didn't catch up on that.
So quickly, I'd like to introduce a alternative point of view to this, because I was always of the understanding that, okay, so the procreation from watcher to female, I don't know where I picked this up. I don't think I was taught this in a church. I think this was part of a study that I did many years ago in my youth. But I came to the conclusion that it was a physical possession of men and then a taint of their seed. So the ability to spread the seed was the man's role, the human man's role, and the seed was cursed and tainted. So it produced a wicked offspring. And I got to this point by saying that God it seems that the angels are created in a male image, but I don't see any implication that God ever wanted them to create, that he is the God of creation and that anything in heaven comes directly from him and is not a product of anything else whatsoever. And also this is seen in Adam and Eve when he creates Adam and doesn't even comprehend at the moment, at least it seems, to create Eve until Adam is in need and God takes mercy on Adam and gives him a help and gives him a means of continuing the race. But it doesn't even seem to imply that he was of the plan to create Eve until the mercy of Adam. But this goes with the same fashion of heaven. There isn't anything listed as feminine in heaven. Male and beautiful, yes, but only an image. It doesn't. I haven't read anything that implies genitalia within angels, so I'm of the idea, at least to this point, my opinion can be changed, but to this point, I was of the idea that the Watchers were possessing human men and creating tainted seed.
Yeah, I enjoy using the gospel. I enjoy using John 3. And then I enjoy the appearance of Yeshua after his resurrection.
You mean in a glorified sense? Is that what you're referring to?
Mm-hmm. Yes,
And
that he was corporeal,
Yeah,
and therefore by being corporeal, by being tangible, born of the Spirit and water. John 3 to Nicodemus, and then afterwards in glorified, it's tangible. It becomes a case that the ruach, the spirit within, which is disembodied, it. I'm trying to like summarize this real easily. The argument about the corporeal body of angels has to be thought of in the same way as it was a corporeal body of Yeshua. So he ate food, he was real, he was touched. So are angels. Now, but it's not like browbeating or anything. It's like the angels and Yeshua in the glorified body of things. The angels and Yeshua couldn't then disembody themselves and enter the hearts and souls of sons of Adam, sons of Cain, sons of Seth. If that makes any sense, like
It does.
their corporeal selves, it wouldn't work.
My only pushback on that is that Jesus was a very unique case in the history of everything, and he was a representation of us. He went on to be a glorified body because we will go on to be a glorified body, and I don't know the connection there between him and angels. Although I do believe angels are corporeal,
yes,
but I also believe they don't have to be in terms of like residing with the Father in heaven. I don't know that there's, other than us, I don't know that the Bible speaks of anything being corporeal in heaven with the
right.
Father.
But that you can't enter the kingdom of heaven without being born of spirit and water is for, that it's anybody.
Okay.
Like how did the Tower of Babel fail? Logistically, it couldn't have been penetrated because they weren't born of. But how do angels descend? Because they are born of spirit and water. Until our glorified status, only angels and one human, Yeshua, are the Nazareth, can traverse up and down. Now Yeshua is on high priest duty, but angels still go up and down. And angels appear to Abraham, for instance, and to Lot, and have had meals.
Yes.
Those sorts of things are like if they were wispy and everything. That's where the wandering spirit comes into things, and it's like to the fact that Jesus is talking to Nicodemus about the logistics of it, and then he's doing it himself after his glorified body. It's like, no, he's got a stomach, he's got a glorified stomach, and he's got hands and everything.
The only reason I bring it up is because although I do believe angels are corporeal and are spoken of a sense and appear a sense, are the Watchers. Have they had human face-to-face interaction with anybody in Scripture, or are they, as I have understood, to be a spiritual sense of watching, not a literal eyes-on target sense?
Mm-hmm. So,
brothers, sorry, I just have to interject. I can do this for about another 5 minutes. I'd like to get the 2 last verses in, and then I have to cut out.
Oh, okay.
Unfortunately, but please continue if you can just wrap it up when you get there. Thank you.
I don't know which class of angels appeared to Abraham and went to Lot, but the words of Yahweh are that the sins of Sodom and Gomorrah have come up to me, and I need to go check it out. In brief, are those perhaps Watchers, that they're to carry the message of, oh, sin is in fact occurring, and then they can bring judgment with the hand of the fire and brimstone, because we're not told what class they are.
We're not, but it implies that it's a Christophany there, that Jesus is among them.
Singular, yes, but there's 3 total.
And I don't think the Watchers would have had the classification or authority to accompany Jesus. That would have likely been a higher messenger angel.
Mm-hmm. So would the angels look like men? I think.
Yeah.
I think it's a high likelihood.
Well, they do give testimony once they get to town, right? The one angel, or the one that stays behind of the 2 that go ahead, has the consultation about how many he will destroy, like not even for 20, 10, so on and so forth.
It's just an alternate point of view that I wanted to bring up, because it's always been in my mind that way. And when you spoke of it, it was a lot different than the way I understood it. But the way I understand it is not concrete in any way, nor is it factual. So Brother Robert has much more experience in study with this than I do. So take that into consideration.
Thank you for the insight on that, brothers. So or in closing these last few verses, who consumed all the acquisitions of men? These are the giants that is being spoken about. Who consumed all the acquisitions of men, and when men could no longer sustain them, the giants turned against them and devoured mankind. And they began to sin against birds and beasts and reptiles and fish, and to devour one another's flesh and drink the blood. Then the earth laid accusation against the lawless ones. Any thoughts, or is that pretty straightforward?
I have always thought that some of the evolutionary model designs are rooted in these couple of verses, so that that no fish was supposed to look the way some of those Darwinian models look. No T-Rex or Velociraptor was supposed to look that way. That whatever was by origin got perverted, and we have evolutionary style drawings. And it's like, yeah, they're kind of looking like sinning against birds, beasts, reptiles, and fish. That even the animals devouring one another's flesh, and that the angels or the giants or the animals of the land, devouring flesh and drinking blood. Like, I think once in a while, even the evolutionary people are kind of onto the truth, or drawing the truth, but they don't, or like sketching it out, and they're like, yeah, this took hundreds and thousands of millions and billions of years. It's like, no, it took 200 watchers sinning and perverting the earth to come up with those drawings. My 2 cents opinion, that credit where it's due, some of those drawings would fit right in here.
So, if not just for anybody but me, expound a little bit on sin against. What does that mean?
Well, if the command by our Heavenly Father to Adam is to preserve and till and have dominion over, then he is the representative of Yahweh to be a good father and a good king. So our Heavenly Father is a good father in Luke and other passages with the Lord's Prayer, the Disciples' Prayer. It's you're good fathers to your children. You wouldn't give your son a scorpion or a stone. How much more our Heavenly Father? Adam is the king, the father of the earth, and that in Genesis is for him to sweat, labor, and be in charge of things. He's the king, he's the representative of Yahweh on earth. And mankind, as we are sons of Adam, are to be. And so you have to be kind to animals. You have to use them for the correct purposes. Yes, they're on earth tasty and all that, but don't beat them. Don't crossbreed them. Do not have sex with them. Like, don't sin against them. Don't make things improper that ought not to be the case from the start. And all of this perverts the earth that is under the charge of Adam and sons of Adam. So I think that it's bestiality, and I think it's crossbreedings and harms that were never supposed to be the case at all.
Yeah, I was of the assumption as well. For those of you watching at a later date, I'd like for you to take it back about 15 seconds and look at Brother Killian's face during these statements that Robert just made. This is why I love this group, because most people would giggle at such a thing, but Killian and the brothers here with me are of a different nature. They are a pure and righteous group where things like that raise an eyebrow, quite literally, and it should. So I agree with Brother Robert on that statement, and I thank you for explaining that further.
Well, on that note, I'm going to cut it short. I do have to get into another engagement in 10 minutes. Brothers, thank you so very much for being here, for reading of chapters 6 and 7. We pick up on chapter 8 next. where we get into what they actually taught. The first line of chapter 7, it's kind of, or chapter 8, sorry, kind of exciting. And Azazel taught men to make swords and knives and shields and breastplates. It's pretty interesting. Get to hear about all the stuff that comes. But for now, gonna bid you adieu, or shalom aleichem, as they say, and I'm learning to say. Wishing you all the absolute best of the day, and we will be back next week, either Monday or Thursday, with another episode. Continue reading on to chapter 8. Anything in closing, brothers? Take care, everyone. Thank you.